few species have been as integral to the technological advancement of pan-galactic civilization as the Hylar of the Garian system. Like azure sapphires, the twin ocean planets of Jol and Nar slowly circle the Garian star. Under their waters lies the great civilization of the Hylar, a water-breathing, soft-boned species with oversized heads and the intellects to match. Although the Hylar are often considered one race, there are in fact several distinct variations within the species, mainly a result of the geographical region and ocean depth from which they hail. For instance, while most Hylar are capable of breathing surface air, there are some that cannot breathe air at all and must travel in massive tanks when off-planet. Now this has led to a great confusion in early records, as often other spacefaring civilizations would record first contact with so-called fishmen multiple times, depending on what Hylar variant they first encountered. And further complicating Hylar history is the issue of Garian's annexation into the Lazax Empire. No reliable records have been discovered detailing the universities of Jol-Nar joining the Imperium, though fragments speak of a rather late but peaceful admission sometime shortly before the Federation of Sol. What is clear, however, is that by the height of the Lazax Imperium, the galaxy was nearly completely reliant on the technological expertise of the Hylar. It is still a widely debated question how an underwater race came to be such masters of technology. Most agree that the large biocerebral area of the Hylar physique, combined with a need to adapt their soft-boned and slow bodies to their environment, created an evolution of material usage as opposed to one of physical adaptation. This tendency towards mental rather than physical evolution meant that the Hylar of Jol-Nar soon found themselves to be the only race in the galaxy able to understand their own complex machinery, virtual code, and chemical compounds. And this left the galaxy in a rather dire predicament. Hylar tech was all but ubiquitous by the end of the Pax Lazax. Thus, galactic infrastructure was reliant on the goodwill of the universities of Jol-Nar. But throughout the Pax Lazax, this hadn't been a problem. The Hylar had been happy to cooperate with the other great races, exporting their technological advancements and receiving wealth, protection, and renown in return. But as the Age of Dusk began, it became clear that the Hylar had been benefiting far more from this arrangement than was first believed. Patient and practical, they had made themselves indispensable to the Lazax, and in so doing had amassed considerable power. It is possible that the Hylar, if given enough time to continue this trend, could have usurped the Emperor himself. So great was their influence. However, this was not to be. The Robot Rebellion, an uprising of the Hylar-designed AI workforce used throughout the galaxy, gave the Lazax pause. After fighting a costly and bloody war to put down the android armies, the Lazax were greatly weakened, but also furious. Accusations were made that the rebellion was the direct responsibility of the Hylar, and as such, sanctions on the universities of Jol-Nar were made, which greatly reduced Hylar influence in the Galactic Council. Whether the Robot Rebellion was an intentional Hylar attempt to destabilize the Lazax or not is still a matter of some debate, but the end result of the war was certainly not intended by the universities. While the galaxy still greatly depended on Jol-Nar technology, the embarrassment of Imperial sanctions left the Hylar reduced and bitter. A proud and arrogant race, this was seen by the Hylar as a terrible affront, and it is likely the memory of these sanctions was one of the primary reasons the universities would betray the Lazacs, giving Sol access to the advanced mass drives that they needed to strike Mechatol Rex. While the Hylar were not involved in the Quan incident that sparked the Twilight Wars, they certainly took full advantage. In the year 58 AT, only 14 short years before the bombing of Mechatol and the death of the Lazax Emperor, the universities of Jol-Nar declared their independence from the Imperium. Intent on defending their treason, the Hylar set about building a military, knowing full well the Lazacs would soon come in force to bring the Garian system back to heel. But even as they built up their military strength, the universities also began to hatch a plan with the nearby Federation of Sol. Word had reached them of a Federation plot to strike the heart of the Empire, and the Hylar immediately saw the wisdom in this. Cut off the head of the snake before it can strike. And so the universities immediately shipped the Federation advanced Type 2 mass drives, with which they could covertly enter the Gull system and decapitate the Imperium. After the attack on Mechatol Rex, pandemonium across the stars ensued. The strike on Mechatol was a far greater success than anyone could have predicted. The Lazacs were set upon by all the great powers, and within 2 decades, they were nothing but a memory within the galaxy. The Twilight Wars, which until the bombings had been confined to a few skirmishes and battles, now erupted as all the great races devolved into total war. The Hylar, arrogant and ambitious, began an all-out offensive into Sardak space, conquering thousands of worlds as the Nor retreated before the superior technology of the universities. But this was not to last. Just after the Twilight Wars erupted, a Jol-Nar expedition party, searching for mineral deposits on the distant, fiery world of Muat, became infected by an organism in the Dulak Mountains. The infection, kept under control at first, soon developed into the infamous Dulak Plague. Not 2 years after the bombing of Mechatol, a massive outbreak on the Hylar homeworlds occurred, quickly spreading throughout university space. The plague became one of the greatest disasters in Jol-Nar history, and it was only early research of Gashly biology that allowed the headmasters to devise a vaccine before the entire Jol-Nar population was wiped out. But before the Hylar could fully recover from this disaster, their military offensive collapsed, and soon they would face the ruthless advance of the Sardak Nor. Slaughter ensued as the militant Nor swept away early Hylar gains and then plunged deep into university space. The situation was dire, requiring the headmasters of Jol-Nar to call forth their greatest weapon, an unfinished war sun, built for them by the enslaved Gashly on Muat. The war sun had the desired effect, reversing the Sardak Nor's advance at Saudor before ending the war at Trinlak. But by that time, both powers were utterly spent. The Hylar, having sustained heavy casualties from both the war and the plague, limped back to the Garian star system to wait out the rest of the dark years in peace. The galaxy's reliance on Jol-Nar engineers and skills was one of the key factors leading to the total collapse of galactic civilization following the Twilight Wars. With the universities reduced by plague and war, galactic infrastructure collapsed, leaving all the great races in utter darkness, without even the HoloNet to connect them. But no darkness lasts forever, and soon a renaissance and time of rebuilding began to dawn. Following the catastrophic Dark Years, the Hylar started utilizing the natural resources of their own planets, and they now extract metals and medicines from the many algae and coral formations on both Jol and Nar. As a new age nears, the Hylar once more strive for the influence they believe they've earned. The Circle of Regents has secretly decided that the Hylar must take the place of the Lazaks in governing and advancing a new united galaxy. Under their mandate, the headmasters have begun to build their forces, and Jol-Nar diplomats and engineers have begun to appear among the other civilizations in large numbers, appearing friendly but with hidden agendas. Soon, the Hylar believe they will claim their empire, and the galaxy will enter an age of technological advancement and intellectual achievement greater than any seen before. Even the re-emergence of the ancient Mahact and the nightmare demons of Acheron have not dampened the university's thirst for galactic dominion. They have played a long game, and now they will seize their prize.